The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
And welcome again, wrestling fans, to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Bryant. News, reviews, previews, and interviews with the most notable names and topics in the sport of wrestling. Today, we're talking with All-American Dom Abounader from the University of Michigan. And Dom, I guess the first question is the title on your name, All-American. Finally, how good does that sound to hear All-American precede your name?
Yeah, I mean, it feels great. Been a monkey on my back for the past 4 years, and it feels good to finally get the job done.
Was there a point of we're going to talk about the whole process in your 4 years at the national championships, but that quarterfinal win to get you into semifinals, was there a moment that it's just like there was that exasperated, you're happy you're in the semis, but it's like finally, take us through that up and down of that tiebreaker finish with Pete Renda.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had a decent lead on him, and I don't think I was wrestling to protect the lead. One of the takedowns he got, I was in deep on a shot. But, yeah, I mean, that match just kind of, showed kind of what my whole career is like. It was just, a lot of drama in that match. And, when I finally, got that, I think I held him down in the final tiebreaker. It felt really good. And it was, the match was definitely a lot of drama in it, and it was just like I said earlier, a monkey off my back. And once I got that match over with and I was an All-American, I felt like all the pressure was off of me, and it felt really good.
Was there a sense of nerves, or was there a sense of redemption when you realized that you're gonna wrestle Renda, and he's the guy that upset you 2 years ago when you were the 4 seed, and he was the guy that came out of nowhere?
Yeah, it was a sense of redemption, I think. I definitely was looking forward to that match. And at the same time, I was, just trying to take it one match at a time because, like you said in the past, I've lost the kids that were seated below me. So that was the match I was looking forward to, but I really just had to concentrate one match at a time. And, the match before that against Lockhaven, that kid wrestled me really tough as well. So although I really was looking forward to that match and getting some redemption on him, I also had to treat each match in its own respect. And, every kid at the national tournament is tough. So you got to look at it one match at a time.
You brought up Corey Hazel at Lockhaven. I was going to mention him later in the program, but that match got kind of chippy. And to be honest with you, it wasn't a great look for either of you. How do you try to maintain regain your composure in that situation? Is there seemed to be some a little extracurricular scraps on both sides there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely lost my cool a little bit. It's not really like me. I got a little bit emotional in the moment. But I mean, ultimately it was a good competitive match, and it's part of the sport. I mean, you're basically fighting each other. So, we were both competitive. We both wanted to win, and there's a lot of emotions going on at the national tournament, and it was a close match. So, and also I was really frustrated because I got in on a ton of shots in that match and couldn't finish a lot of them, and even gave up takedowns off of them. So it was really frustrating match for me as well, and I just kind of let my emotions get the best of me. But in the end, I got the job done and moved on to the next round. But yeah, I mean, it's just competitive atmosphere.
We're going to come back and talk about the course of your tournament later on in the program, but we want to find out. First thing I want to know is, first time I saw your name in a bracket, I'm like, how do you say that? So the question is, what's the worst way your last name has been butchered over the years that you could recall?
Oh, man. I don't know. There's been a lot. Usually as in the little kids tournaments, they would get butchered every time, but there's been like a border or a bounder. I mean, there's been a lot of different ones. I'd say like a border might be the worst that I've heard.
Yeah, because it was like, okay, his first name's spelled a little differently, and then I don't know. I mean, first of all, what's the heritage of the name?
Yeah, so my first name Dominic is spelled after and named after my grandfather on my mom's side. They're Italian. And then my last name is from my father, and he's Lebanese, so it's an Arabic last name.
Yeah, and some of the shots from Tony Rotundo at Wrestlers Are Warriors, especially in that quarterfinal match you could just see it's just like, wow, that guy. That's an intense looking dude. So I'm gonna make an assumption that was a family member there with the Abounader shirt and the just the look of intensity that usually only a parent can have.
Yeah, that's my cousin Danny. He's been a big supporter of me throughout my whole career. So it was really a nice picture that Tony captured, and it was a cool little picture to have. But yeah, that's my cousin Danny.
Hey, you had everybody. I'm sure it's one of those things. It's like, hey, who is that guy? It's like, yeah, he definitely looked like an intense wrestling fan. So that was again one of the cooler shots, the celebration shots, is that Tony captured. Now, when we go back to discovering the sport of wrestling, Northeast Ohio, the hotbed of that part of the state and one of the hotbeds of wrestling in the country. How old were you when you started wrestling, and what really made you take to the sport?
I was in first grade, so. Was that like 7 years old? So my dad wrestled in high school. Actually, he was a city champ in Cleveland, and he pinned Mike Golick for the city finals, actually. So that's kind of his little claim to fame. But he got me into the sport. Just a couple of my buddies were going to start doing it, and I was going to start doing it. My older brother was in 7th grade at the time. He was going to start doing it. So really my dad got me into the sport. But, also my brother being older than me and getting into it kind of pushed me to do it. And, he was 6 years older than me, and he was always a lot bigger than me when we were younger. I'm a lot bigger than him now, but, when we were young, he was always pushing me and driving me. And, having an older brother and my father to push me into the sport really kind of got me to love the sport. And that's kind of where my competitive nature came from, just always having an older brother beating up on me.
The dynamic of the clubs out there, even before you get into high school, before you end up going to St. Edward, you jumped over from where you grew up in Gates Mills to the West Shore Wrestling Club. Guy Seiko, the guy you might have heard, runs this little company called Defense Soap. Run the club there for a long, long time. And why the shift? And ultimately, you had an older brother that went to St. Ed's, but the decision to go to St. Ed's for your career.
Yeah, so like I said, my brother's 6 years older than me, so I went in 6th grade to West Shore. So I was already kind of familiar with the St. Edward program and their little kids program. I used to go to the camps there every summer and things like that. So I was kind of already involved into the program. And then, I was obviously starting to think about high school and where I wanted to go. And, going into West Shore was a good stepping stone going into St. Ed's. So that's kind of what drew me there. I wrestled for Mayfield's Wrestling Youth Club before that, which we had a lot of good kids in that club. Georgie DiCamillo was in there. Johnny DeJulius was in there at one point. I think Ty Mitch was in there at one point. So we had a lot of good kids come out of that little area and that little club. But, they were kind of all older than me, so they were gone at the time. And, I wanted to get a little bit more competition at the time. So that's kind of what drew me to West Shore. And, plus those guys are awesome people, Guy Seiko and the St. Edward coaches, Heffernan and all of them. So they're awesome people. So that's what drew me there.
There's always a stigma about the public versus private situation. And in Ohio, of course, it centers around St. Edward. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much, but from a perspective of the athlete, when the choice, how does that discussion go with your family? You did have the older brother that went, but when it came time for you to discuss your family, how does that go to say, all right, I want to go to St. Edward, in terms of how it costs and things like that? I mean, how much strain and discussion goes on as you're entering high school? Is like, this is where I want to go to high school.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big choice for me. I think I was between St. Ed's and in University School, which is on the east side, close to where I live. I think one of the harder parts was, all my friends on the east side where I lived and who I grew up with were going to different high schools. So I was going to be going into St. Ed's with not really knowing many people besides, the people I knew through wrestling. So I didn't really have a ton of friends there, but obviously the wrestling program is what I wanted to be in, and I knew that they would make me the best wrestler that I could be there. And, also their academics there is really good. It's top-notch college prep school. So those were two big things that drew me to the school. And also, I mean, at the time, I was a big football player, so their football team is really good as well. So that was something else that I was interested in doing at St. Ed's. So they kind of had everything I was looking for, plus with my family ties there, my brother going there, and just those factors ultimately made the decision for me.
Yeah, Ty Walls mentioned the football program as the main reason he went there, and it wasn't even wrestling wasn't even in his mind. He says, I didn't even start as a freshman, so there's a couple different draws there. Now, one thing that's also unique about St. Edward is the history with the program, and you added to that history this year now 28 consecutive years that an alum of St. Edward has been a Division I All-American. If you look at NCAA counting Division II, it goes back even further. And with you and Dean Heil as seniors this year, was there any added pressure on you for that? Because you had been there 3 times and hadn't placed yet, so you've got that pressure. And then now, there's the legacy of your alma mater on your shoulders as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I heard about it going in, and I've known about the streak, obviously. But honestly, I was really just doing it for myself at the time. In the past years at the NCAA tournament, I've just put way too much pressure on myself. And I think it's kind of caused me to keep matches close and then, ending up giving a takedown up at the end and, losing the match and, losing everything I've worked for. So this year was a lot different. I just wanted to have some fun and, get after it for 7 minutes. And that was the mindset going in. I tried to take all the pressure off of myself and, really just have some fun at the tournament. And it was great that it was in Cleveland. I had all my family and friends there. So I was really just trying to enjoy the moment and have some fun and leave all that other stuff on the side. I knew about the streak and, I knew that I would need to be one of the guys All-American to keep it going. So, that added pressure, I kind of just tried to cast aside and, focus on my wrestling and my goals.
Now, when we circle back to the St. Edward stuff in terms of coming through, Greg Urbis has been the longtime coach of that program, but John Heffernan's kind of been one of the guys, the key to the technique, the very, very stern-looking guy, guy that I once actually got St. Edward's lost coming to the Beast of the East one year as I picked up the team in Baltimore. This is Mark Moe's era here, so I almost did not survive that trip, and between Frank Jane and John Heffernan wanting to kill me, that was my first introduction to St. Ed's and Coach Heffernan specifically. But what about the dynamic of that room, coaching staff-wise, that it's Greg Urbis is the dean of high school coaches in Ohio. What makes that dynamic easy to learn from?
Yeah, I mean, it's great because everybody works so well together. Heffernan runs the room, and he was a Gable guy, so obviously he knows what it takes to win, and what kind of things you need to do in the room, in order to make each person great. And not only him though, the great thing about St. Ed's is, like we've talked about, is the alumni. You have alumni coming back for Thanksgiving, reaching out to you. They're coming back for Christmas vacation, and you're getting to wrestle with the best college guys in the room. I remember when I was in high school as a freshman wrestling guys like Lance Palmer coming back, and having those guys in the room being able to help you is a huge benefit. And not only them, other coaches there as well. Jeff Leonard was a huge inspiration for me, and he helped me through a lot of things mentally and physically. And Danny Gonzer was there at the time when I was a junior. He helped me on top a lot, and really helped me learn how to dominate kids on top using the boots and stuff. And we had Sean Harris coming back. Mike Kozicki came back after he left Michigan. That was my senior year. So, I mean, the list goes on and on. You can name people. It's just a great environment. And, it's a group of guys that are really just trying to help the kids get better. And, and obviously it shows that it works. So
you threw a lot of names out there, not of names that people remember from coming through, even those that followed, like the Iron Man and the big events that come out of Ohio. And then you've got guys that have made Olympic teams and guys that are still prevalent in the world of wrestling, like Andy Rovat, who's really a big champion of where he came from at St. Edward. And from the guys in the room, when you guys are coming through, how much did you pay attention to what the St. Ed's grads were doing, say at the senior level, Reason I ask is there seems to be a disconnect between what the high school kids know and follow from college wrestling, and then there's a further disconnect to the senior and international level. So how much were you guys tuned into what guys like Andy were doing?
Yeah, I mean, I actually wasn't a huge, college wrestler. I didn't really watch a whole lot my freshman and sophomore year. I was kind of more focused on the high school part. And, obviously I was watching what Andy was doing on the Olympic level, but I really didn't know a lot about college wrestling at the time other than what our alumni were doing. I knew how Lance was doing and guys like that. So I didn't really start watching college wrestling until about like junior year. Obviously, I was going to have to start looking at colleges. So I got a lot more involved into it. But, yeah, I mean, all the alumni that wrestled on that level I knew about. Obviously, Michigan was a huge part of my decision-making. And, they used to run a camp at St. Ed's every year. So I knew a lot of those guys. I knew Joe. I knew Mike. I know that Andy went there. I knew that, Mark Mose went there. So, all the alumni, I had a good awareness of what they were doing, but college wrestling in general, I wasn't a huge, supporter of until about my junior year.
Now, being an Ohio guy, there is the battle between the Ohio State fans and what they call that state up north. Why the decision for you to go to that state up north to compete?
Well, obviously one of the big reasons, like I mentioned, was just the alumni that we had there and that we had to go through there. And then, Sean Bormet and Donnie Pritzloff were there at the time, which, I mean, those are two of the best coaches in the country. So, having them there and having Andy run the RTC, as far as coaches, I thought that was the best decision for me. They were matching whatever money other schools were giving me. But yeah, a lot of people being from Ohio didn't really like that I went to Michigan, but it's kind of funny because I feel like I still had a good support from the Ohio State guys, as long as I wasn't wrestling an Ohio State guy. At the national tournament, I had a lot of Ohio State fans come up to me and, congratulate me and, say good career and this and that, which I thought was awesome. As long as I'm not wrestling an Ohio State guy, I think I had some support from them. And, it just goes to show the Ohio wrestling family it's a family regardless where you go. They still want to see you do well, as long as you're not wrestling their guys. So, it was a big decision. But to be honest, I wasn't a huge Ohio State fan in general, or a Michigan fan really. But it made the decision easier that I wasn't like a big Ohio State football fan.
As we look at your career, once you get to Ann Arbor, and you come in, you're 0 for 3 in terms of medals going in, and then 2017 you start the year, and then you hadn't taken a red shirt, then you get hurt, and it's like, well, the plan obviously wasn't for you to red shirt, but when you look back on that experience, yeah, you got hurt and it ended the season, but what do you think you benefited from with that red shirt season?
To be honest, that year I really got to see what the guys were doing that were winning and what the guys were doing that were losing. Both guys could be great wrestlers, but what the differences were. And really, I had a lot of them right in my room. We had 3 freshmen All-American that year, 3rd, 4th, and 4th. And, I looked at what they were doing, and, it wasn't really anything technical that I was doing differently, or, anything physical that I was doing differently. It was just a lot of mental, what were they doing mentally? And what I found was that they were really just relaxed and confident and having fun. And, that's what made all the difference for me this year and compared to last year. And that's what made the difference for them as freshmen. When you're out there attacking and you're just having fun with it and you're not putting any pressure on yourself to win or lose, I think that's when you wrestle your best. And, all the top guys, I think that's what they do, and it shows. So that year off really got me able to see, that aspect of wrestling is take all the pressure off yourself. And, we have a sign at St. Ed's. We call it the 3rd sign. It says just wrestle. And that's really what you got to do. You just got to wrestle and not worry about anything else.
as you come back to the mat this year, you look at the weight class. Bo Nickel pins people, wins national titles, beats Gabe Dean. Miles Martin, previous national champ. Just the 184 has just been very deep the last several years. You look at the guys that go through. I mean, you were on that list of, oh man, look at all how good these guys are that haven't placed at this weight class yet. And what did you prepare yourself for this year? You'd scrap with those guys and had some, especially that nickel match in the dual meet where things were just really fun to watch. I remember watching it at a Buffalo Wild Wings in Hampton, Virginia, going, holy crap, this is an awesome match. But mindset going into 184 this season, and obviously goal setting and where you thought you ultimately finished in relation to those goals.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I hadn't accomplished my goals in the past, but that didn't really change my confidence. I always thought that I was, one of the top guys in the country. Even when I did an All-American, I thought that I was the top kid in the country. I just didn't perform that way, I messed up here, messed up there. But I always thought that, I was better than a lot of the kids on the podium. So going into that year, I felt the same. This year, I felt the same way. And, in my mind, every year I've felt this way. I want to win it. My goal was to be a national champion, not to be fifth. I'm happy that I was an All-American, but I didn't reach my goals. And, I really thought going into it that I had the ability to do that, and I trained for it. And, I knew the weight class was going to be tough. It was a tougher weight class this year, and I knew I was going to have to beat some really good guys. And, but that's just college wrestling. I mean, you're always going to have tough kids to wrestle. How are you going to get through that? And how are you going to, perform when the spotlight's on you? But yeah, going into the year, I was confident in myself. I felt good. Having that injury and time off, I think was good for me. Going into the year, I felt great, and I felt like I was in the best shape of my life this year.
When you go in to wrestle a guy like Bo Nickel, who brings a lot of things that you're really not supposed to do as a wrestler, the look and feel, and obviously you saw what he did to Miles Martin in the finals, but you gave him some fits there in that dual meet. And in terms of actual wrestling, when you get into a scramble with a guy like Bo Nickel, what is the one thing that you've got to remember to maintain, I guess, position-wise or even mentally when in a scrap with him?
Yeah, I mean, he just does so many different things. There's just a few things you have to be aware of. You got to feel the gator roll and things like that. But other than that, I think that was the difference between the first time I wrestled him and then in the semis when I wrestled him was in the semis I was thinking too much about what he was going to do. And although you do have to be aware of those things, it can affect the way that you wrestle. I wasn't as offensive, and that first period of the match in the semis, I wasn't getting to my attacks like I was in the dual meet, and I wasn't moving my feet. And, I was a little banged up at that time of the tournament, but, nothing that was hindering the way that I was wrestling. And, I just wrestled them a little bit differently. I was kind of thinking about those things a little too much, and it affected the way that I was wrestling. Whereas in the dual meet, I was aware of them, but I was still wrestling my way and my style. And, I was wrestling the score the way that I wanted to score, and I got to my shots. But you definitely have to be aware of those things. I mean, you saw it all year from him and a lot of those Penn State guys. They're dangerous from a lot of positions, so you have to be aware of those things. But I think it can affect the way that you wrestle.
Bittersweet in some sense that you finally get on that podium to get the monkey off your back, and then you can end in the odds, first, third, fifth, or seventh. You end the season, and in your case, your college career, with your hand raised. When you get to hear your name called on that podium, what goes through your mind as you get the handshake and you get handed the award?
Yeah, I mean, it felt great. Like we've said, I felt like it was a monkey off my back, and I was proud of myself, and I wanted to make my family proud, and everyone that supported me proud, and the St. Edward alumni proud, and Michigan proud. I was happy in that sense, but at the same time, I expected myself to be there, and I expected myself to be there a lot of times. So in a sense, it was, I had that expectation, which kind of drew away from the glory, but it still was amazing, and it's still, I was happy to see that I finally reached that goal of being an All-American. But I just know I could have done so much more, and I expected myself to be there, and but I mean, it was still an awesome feeling when they say your name. and, it felt great.
We look at the makeup of this team. You didn't get the individual titles. You had guys, Micic and Kuhn finishing second, and you get awesome type of development from a guy like Miles Amoon, who, at that weight class, he's okay. Everybody's talking about Mark Hall. Everybody's talking about Zaid Valencia, but this is a guy who kind of showed up out of nowhere. I mean, granted, in Michigan, you can't throw a rock without hitting an Amin somewhere on a wrestling mat. But, what have you seen from his real development? Because he really wasn't a huge, wow, this guy's, he was good in Michigan, but, and he had some accolades, but it's like not blue chip. And he's out there battling with the best guys that are the blue chippers. I mean, where have you seen his improvement as a teammate?
He just works hard. I mean, he gets after it every single day, and, he's got a strong family support, like you said, and he's also got a strong teammate support for him. And, I like to think that we're a family over here in Michigan, and, everybody's honestly just trying to make each other better. And, between me and him and Logan and, Beasley, and then, you add in the rest of the guys in the room pushing each other. I mean, he really did get a lot better over the years, and everybody kind of counts him out a little bit. But, I think he's right there with Mark Hall and Zahid, and he could beat those guys any day of the week. And, if he just keeps working the way he is, then he'll get there, and that's the same as, the other young guys, Logan and Stevan and, rest of the guys in the team, Drew Manton, and all those young guys, they work hard, and they're in there every day, getting 2-a-days in, and that's what makes all the difference for them. And, Miles is no different. He's a hard worker, and he pushed me all year. And, we had some battles. We did some simulation matches the week before nationals, and we got after it. So, I knew that he was good enough to do the things that he's done the past 2 years. So, I mean, they're just going to keep getting better, and we got a lot of good recruits coming in, and, the future for Michigan is, I think, really bright. We got a lot of really good kids and a lot of really good wrestlers. I mean, everyone's just, great people and great families. So, I think we're going to do good things.
It was a season of up and downs in some respects. I mean, you guys come out flat as flat can be, and Lehigh hammers you earlier in the year. Ultimately, you end up tied with NC State with a fourth-place finish. You bring a trophy back, and then you've got, Adam Kuhn, who had beaten Kyle Snyder during the year. I'm more interested to know about, people talk about Kuhn and his major and just how big of an athlete he is. What are some things that you guys as teammates discovered about Adam Kuhn? You're like, man, this guy's something else.
Yeah, I mean, he's a quiet kid. So, I mean, me and him were the captains on the team this year and for the past 2 years, I think. And, he's a little quiet, but he leads by example. I think that I was a little bit more of the vocal leader, and he really leads by example. He's a hard worker, and it's a little bit harder for him because of his class schedule. So he's not always practicing the same times we were. But I mean, that's something that he had to do, and it was hard on him. I mean, he's aerospace engineer, and, his class schedule would match up with our practice times a lot. So he had to find time to come in on his own and find guys to come in on his own. And, there's not always guys his size, so it's hard to find partners. And, he had to go through a lot of those things by himself, kind of, because like I said, sometimes he'd be working out at different times. And, when you're doing that on your own, it's hard when you don't have a lot of guys around you pushing you. It becomes difficult. So I think that's just a testament to his mental toughness and to the coaches, Sean Bormet and Josh and Joe working with him at different times when he needed it. And, he's a really great kid, and he looks out for everybody. And he's just, like I said, he's a little quiet, and, he leads by example and, shows everybody this is the way things need to be done. Watch me do it. He's always there to do it.
Did you ever have any scraps with him on the mat?
Yeah, he's a little too big for me, but we roll around and I mess with him a little bit from time to time. But, he's a big guy, so he's a little bit too big for me. We actually had a football game in the beginning of the year. Me and him were getting after it, like a little, two-hand touch football game. It was fun, but we did a little team event. But yeah, he's a big boy. He's a little bit too big for me.
I just got to know, I mean, is it scary when somebody's coming at you with maybe a full head of steam of that size?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. But, I've been around him for 5 years, so he doesn't scare me anymore.
Yeah, until he hears that comment. Now, moving forward, one thing that actually kind of caught a lot of people by surprise is I get a text late on Saturday night from a friend of mine who's at the Michigan team banquet, and Coach McFarland lets everybody know that he's going to be stepping away just hours earlier. We had the opportunity to give Barry Davis a sign off as he was stepping down as the head coach of the University of Wisconsin, and part of me is kind of disappointed that Joe didn't announce it earlier because we didn't get to give him that send off. In Cleveland, he's a Cleveland guy, but he did it on his terms. He did it with you guys. What was that moment like when Coach McFarland told you he was stepping down?
Yeah, so there were some rumors flying around the room, obviously beforehand, that this was going to be his last ride. But I think that he didn't do it until afterward at the banquet because he didn't want to take away from us, and he didn't want to take away from what the team was accomplishing and what we were accomplishing as his kids. And that's just a testament to who he is as a person. And I think that's the reason, is because he didn't want to take anything away from what we were accomplishing that weekend and put the focus on him. He wanted to keep the focus on us. And when we finally heard it, I kind of, like I said, there were some rumors. I kind of thought that it was coming, but I thought that he was going to even wait longer and announce until we got back. But, it turned out to be perfect timing, and, it's definitely hard to see him go. He's been such a big part of the program for, a long time. And, he's been a big part of my life as well. Like I said, they used to run Michigan wrestling camps back at St. Ed's when I was in grade school, middle school. So I've known Joe for a really long time, and it's definitely going to be hard to see him go.
Yeah, it's going to be strange, I think, for a lot of wrestling fans to look over to that bench and not see that beautiful plume of silver hair, the silver fox. So then you're replacing him a guy with actually that has no hair in Sean Bormet. Talk about what Sean has done for the program and what makes him the right leader for Wolverine Wrestling moving forward.
Yeah, I think he's definitely the right leader. I think everybody in the program was pulling for him to get the job, and he's the perfect person for it. He's been like a father figure to me, being away from home. He's been like a father to me here in Michigan, and, that's the kind of person he is. He's there for you when you need him. And, technically I don't think there's anybody better than him in the country. So, he's really just a perfect person for a head coaching position. And, he's a huge influence on a lot of the guys. Everybody loves him. I've never heard anything bad about him. And, everybody on the team is behind him and, really appreciates everything he does. And I know he's got big plans for the program. And, for him, it's kind of been a long time coming to be a head coach. I know he's got a lot of things in mind, a lot of plans, make a few changes. And, obviously he's bringing in a ton of great recruits. We have a lot of good recruits coming in. So, I think he's a perfect guy for the job. And, we'll see, but he's definitely got some big plans.
We look at your plans moving forward. What degree were you pursuing, and what are you looking to do once you've finished up things there in Ann Arbor in terms of school?
Yeah, so I was a sociology major with a minor in entrepreneurship, and as of right now, I'm still not totally decided what I'm doing, but I'm definitely exploring some options to compete, and I'm just kind of resting a little bit. A little banged up still from NCAA. So I'm looking to compete. I'll definitely compete this summer. I'm actually in the process of getting my Lebanese passport. So I might be able to compete for Lebanon if I wanted to, just to have that option. And then, I also would like to get into some coaching. I think that I could be a pretty good coach. I've been a captain on the team for the past 3 years, and I like to think I do a pretty good job of leading guys, and, I think I could be a good coach. So that's definitely another option I'm looking at. And then, I could always move home and, start working on my father or do something for myself. So I've got some options right now. I'm still in the process of figuring it out and, exploring whatever options I do have. So I'm undecided, but I should know soon.
Actually, glad you brought up the Lebanon thing, because Andy Rovat talked to me last year when he was coaching David Habit at the European Championships, and he's in that room with the Cliff King Wrestling Club repping Slovenia, whereas Micic has the Serbian heritage, and understand that he's probably going to be going the Serbian route, and then that would be you for Lebanon. I think there's somebody else, right, that can actually compete for another nation. Yeah,
the Amines have San Marino, so they could do that.
San Marino wrestling. I mean, Ann Arbor is bigger than San Marino, isn't it?
Yeah, it's small.
I'm gonna have.
We could have a little European family.
I'm gonna do some Google juice here real quick. Let's see how big is San Marino. This is again, San Marino has a population of 33,000 people. That's it.
Yeah, it's small.
It's a city. Yeah, well, it's a city. It's anyway, San Marino. I couldn't remember that one with them, but you could basically be like, all right, well, UWW just have the World Cup here. We've got enough teams to represent it. So now, one thing I also want to go back in time for, and this is probably one of the oddest stories that I will remember about you, and it goes back to Fargo. And I'm wondering, do you know where I'm going with this?
No, I don't.
Okay, Fargo, I believe you were a cadet at 140. I think that was the weight class, and we still were under the old rules. And the three periods thing, you went like 8 or 9-1, and you finished in 5th place. Whereas the guy who finished second, how many losses did he have in the tournament?
He had 3 losses.
3 losses and was second. You 1 loss 5th. It's just one of those things that I remember after that situation. It was really odd. It was actually Parker Von Eggety was the kid from North Carolina who ends up wrestling at West Virginia. But I remember that scenario there. I said, this has got to change. And now they've since gone to a line bracket. I remember this. It was basically, I was calling it the Abounader rule because, like, okay, if you score a point, no, you've got to win a period to get, it was basically, I came up with this whole format to avoid that ever happening again, submitted it to USA Wrestling, and by that time, the state leaders had already decided to go the line bracket. So I spent a lot of time in trying to make sure that your situation never happened again, but I will always remember Dominic Abounader because of that situation where it's like, wait, he lost once in 5th, and that guy was second, and he lost 3 times. So just...
Yeah, that was crazy.
A little bit of trivia there.
I remember I had I don't know, that second day you have so many matches with the old rules. I mean, I had 6 matches, I want to say, in the second day. And, we stayed in the dorms over there, and I just remember the dorms being miserable. I mean, that was my least favorite part about Fargo, was sleeping in those dorms. It was so hot and you couldn't sleep. But anyway, I had 6 matches that day. And the very last match, I wrestled Parker, and I was just exhausted. I lost on a step out, and I just remember being super disappointed. And I was a favorite that year, and I was real disappointed about it. But then in the wrestle back, or then they go to the smaller pools, like a 3-man round robin on each side. And I was talking to Coach Huff, and he's like, well, if you wrestle this next kid and you don't let him score on you, then I think you'll be in the finals, because he doesn't get a point if he doesn't score on you or something like that. And, so I did that, and I wrestled him. I think I didn't let him score on me. And actually, by doing that, I sent Parker to the finals, because then he had more points than that kid that beat him. So not only did he beat me and make me not go to the finals, but I also helped send him to the finals in the next round. So, that was pretty crazy.
The nuances of the vertical pairing, where you could, there were years what J.D. Bergman lost and made the finals, won the tournament. I mean, things like that. They don't happen anymore, obviously, because we've got a line bracket, but just the nuances in the whole, thank goodness we're away from that, although that was really cool because you could actually see if 3 guys were on the same bracket that were hammers, they were going to probably see each other. So we lose that with it, but we actually have, you lose once, you probably shouldn't be on the top step, right?
Yeah, you'd think.
Anyway, we're talking with Dominic Abounader. So, looking at what you're going to do for your future, where can people keep up with you, social media and things of that sort?
Yeah. You asked me where?
Yeah.
I have Twitter. It's at Terminator13. It's spelled a little bit differently, but I also have Instagram, Facebook. So I do it all. I try to stay connected at least a little bit. I don't really tweet very much, but whenever I do decide what I'm doing, I'm sure I'll put something out there, and everybody will know. So I hope to know that soon. Like I said, I got to clear up some injuries and get that all sorted out, and then I'm going to decide on what I'm doing. So people will know soon.
Now, as you walk off the mat at Nationals, it's something that Brian Hazard and I have been doing, and it's actually started by Todd Hibbs. All the seniors get their senior send-off, where win or lose in that medal round, they get, senior, finishing his career. It's one of my favorite things I get to do at the national tournament. Now, actually, on this show, I get a chance to do it again and ask you, final thoughts, messages you want to send out to M Go Blue and everybody in Michigan and Ann Arbor, family, friends in Ohio. Basically kind of an open forum for you to say, hey, thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's helped me along the way. Since I was a little kid, I've had, countless people help me, countless different families. And, thank you to everybody at Michigan, all the families here that have helped me, the Amines, the Amassas, the Torellas, everybody here is just, it's a great family atmosphere. So thanks to everybody. And then, special thank you, obviously, to my family and, my father who's helped me, I can't even tell you how much he's helped me. So, and just to the rest of the wrestling world, just try to have some fun with the sport. It's a very, very hard sport, and, you got to find a way to have fun with it and find a way to enjoy it, and it makes everything a lot easier. So go Blue, and, thanks to everybody.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. First time listening? Well, you can change that by going to mattalkonline.com/getshorttime to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or listen on your favorite podcatcher at mattalkonline.com/listen.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to mattalkonline.com.